Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. I wanted to do an antenna comparison test between a folded dipole and a regular dipole. So I had a 20 meter standard regular old dipole, nothing fancy. The coax comes right up to the wires at the center, and it's cut for around the middle of the band. Here's an SWR plot of it with the VNA, and it looks pretty much like what you'd expect to see from a regular dipole across the 20 meter band. Now, for the folded dipole, I took the length of window line that I used in the previous experiments, the end-fed failed experiment, which was spawned by a viewer comment, and I thought, well, let's just go ahead and answer this comment by going through an experiment to test, you know. And boy, somebody posted those videos to QRZ, and I really got beat up, but it was an experiment, you know. It wasn't anything but an experiment. But I still had the window line, and a lot of people wanted me to do all kinds of different things with trying to do it end-fed with different transformers and such, but I wanted to do something else. I wanted to use it to make a 20 meter folded dipole similar to the 40 meter folded dipole that I'd made previously, and then do a comparison side by side with the regular dipole and the folded dipole. So I did a series of tests. Now, both antennas are mounted to a mast, about a 20-foot mast, back behind the RV a ways, and both of them are set up as a sloper, with the ends starting at about the same 6 feet off the ground and going up to the 20-foot apex of the mast at the other end. There's a slight difference in angle between the two antennas, a slight difference in orientation, as far as how they're lined up on the compass. But they're pretty close. I mean, for what I've got to work with out here in the desert, I've got them as close as I can get them to being set up the same physically. So we should be able to do side-by-side comparisons. On the outside of the RV, I have an AB switch box hooked up to my external antenna feed, so I can fairly easily switch between the dipoles. And I did a series of tests. Now, the first thing I did was whisper beaconing with the Zactec beacon at about 200 to 300 milliwatts. And these tests were run about 15 minutes apart, so propagation shouldn't have been changing too terribly much. And they're pretty similar. Perhaps a few less hits on the folded dipole out to the west, or out to the east, a few more closer to the west. But overall, the footprints of the whisper hits were very, very similar. The next test I did was a QSO test with Al, KG5KRQ, back there in Rockport, Texas. So we'll look at that first, and then we'll look at a noise floor test and a crossband interference test, which is one of the more successful of the two tests. I wanted to see if a folded dipole would be a good choice for like a field day setup where you have multiple stations that are in near proximity to each other, and you get that receiver descents going on like between the 20 and the 40 meter station and so on. So we'll do that one as well. But first, let's go look at a QSO between me and Al back there in Rockport. Okay, KG5KRQ from KB9RLW, portable 7. All right, Al, how copy now? Over.
KB9RLW, KG5KRQ, and I've got you at an S5. Fluctuating a little bit. It's got pretty good solid audio for sure.
Okay, I got you about an S3 to S4, sometimes peaking to 5. Give me about 30 seconds. I'm going to run out and switch over to... Okay, KG5KRQ, KB9RLW. Actually, that was the regular dipole. This is the folded dipole. This is the folded dipole, Lure.
KG9RLW, KG5KRQ. You're down at 7 point.
Yeah, you're not even tickling my meter now. Okay, I want to do a noise floor comparison between the two. Unfortunately, out here in the desert, it's really quiet. I'm on the regular dipole right now, and as you can see, the S meter's not even moving. So to, I guess, bring up the noise floor, I'm going to use the preamp. So, okay. We'll go to preamp 2. And that gives us a good noise floor, I guess. S1 to S2. Occasional little spikes from probably thunderstorms that are across the middle of the country. So S2 to around S2 noise floor. Okay, I'm going to go switch to the folded dipole. Okay, this is the folded dipole. And it looks like it's about the same. Maybe just a tad bit lower. It looks like it's hovering just a little below S2. So our noise floor definitely went down just a touch, but not a dramatic difference. And yeah, that's that. On to the next test. Okay, for this test, I've got my neighbor James over there on 40 meters, and he's going to be throwing his call sign out at 100 watts. Our antennas are about 50 feet apart. So we should be able to see or hear maybe some receiver descents. And also on the ICOM right about here, there'll be a little OVF that appears when the front end is picking up a strong overdriving signal, so maybe that'll flicker too. I'm on the regular dipole. This is on the regular dipole. KB7 TBT, KB9 RLW. Go ahead, James. Okay, that was good. Hang on, I'm going to switch antennas. KB9 RLW. Okay, so as you saw, that OVF was flickering, and you could actually hear a little of the receiver being overloaded from his signal on 40 meters. I'm going to go switch to the folded dipole now. Okay, now we're on the folded dipole. Okay, James, I'm on the folded dipole now. Go ahead and do that one more time. Okay, I could hear it just barely, just a little bit. But as you notice, there was no flickering of the OVF, so it definitely reduced the incoming signal. Here is a VNA scan of the SWR and impedance across the 20-meter band of the folded dipole. Now, as is characteristic of folded dipoles, it's quite broad. You can see the SWR is very low. I'm not quite perfectly centered on the band, but you can still see that we're going from about 1.1 to 1 at the bottom end of the band to about 1.23 to 1 at the top end of the band. So a very broad banded antenna. Compared to the scan of the regular dipole, you can see how the curve is just a little bit sharper. We go from a higher level to a higher level at the ends of the band. Again, not quite centered. I've cut them as close as I could without putting too much time into it. But the folded dipole is definitely broader banded than the standard dipole. So as we can see from the tests, there's kind of mixed results. In general, it seems the folded dipole performed a little bit worse than the standard dipole. The successes were definitely in the crossband interference reduction with the 40 meters and 20 meters. When James was transmitting 100 watts 50 feet away, there was definitely a reduction there. Now, I don't know if that's linked to the performance difference between the two, or if it is actually the folded aspect of it. As far as overall performance, though, it was definitely a bit worse than the regular dipole. Now, why is that? I can only speculate. My main idea is inefficiency in the ball-in, the 4-to-1. Now, I'm using T130-2 cores, which I had available, and there is definitely information out there that the better mix for HF is I think a Type 63. I've got notes on that. I suppose I could rewind the ball-in with those cores if I can get some, and then do some more tests to see if that's where the problem is, if it's the losses in the ball-in. But that's what I would speculate, is that the Dash 2 cores are probably not optimal for HF. I mean, they work, the antenna works, you get out, but maybe it could be better with a different core. So what I can conclude from these tests is advantages, broad bandwidth, and very good at limiting cross-band interference. So like in a field day setup where you have multiple stations that are in close proximity and antennas that are in close proximity, folded dipoles might be a good choice to help cut down on the interference between stations. Performance, it works okay. Not stellar, but again, that could just be the balance. So that was a series of tests comparing the two dipoles. We might do this again in the future if I get some different cores and rewind that balun. I know that the performance I saw on the 40 meter version was pretty darn good, but I didn't have a regular dipole to compare against, so who knows what we would see there. Anyway, I'm babbling. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, click to subscribe. Join us on the Facebook channel for discussion about the videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, please click to support me on my Patreon page.